close your eyes, just for a moment. I want you to listen. Listen past the sound of your own breathing, past the hum of your refrigerator or the traffic outside your window. Can you hear it? An echo, a whisper from a time when the world was new and monsters were real. A time when gods walked among us, loving, fighting, and bleeding just like we do. We think we're so different now, don't we? With our satellites and our smartphones and our carefully constructed realities. We think we've outgrown these old stories, but we haven't. The tale of Greek mythology isn't just a collection of fables for a history class. It's our story. It's the original source code for our ambitions, our fears, our greatest triumphs, and our most tragic flaws. It's the story of a family so dysfunctional it makes our own look tame. A family that just happens to rule the cosmos. Tonight, we're not just going to tell that story. We are going to descend into its heart. We will walk through the darkness before creation, feel the sting of betrayal that toppled a king, and steal fire from the gods themselves. And along the way, we're going to ask why. Why do these ancient echoes still have such power over us? What can the paranoia of a Titan king teach us about our own anxieties? What can a hero's impossible journey home tell us about what we're all searching for? This is not a bedtime story to help you fall asleep. This is a story to help you wake up. So, take a deep breath, relax, and let's begin. In the beginning. Before time, before light, before any god had a name, there was only chaos. Don't think of chaos as we do, a messy room, a hectic schedule. This was something more profound. Imagine the silent, limitless, formless potential of everything that ever could be, all at once and not at all. It was the cosmic static before the first broadcast, a void pregnant with possibility. From this primordial soup of nothingness, the first stirrings of existence did not erupt in a flash of light, but rather they emerged, like ideas taking shape. First came Gaia, the earth, not a ball of rock, but a consciousness. The broad-chested, nurturing, stable ground upon which all of life's drama would unfold. She was the stage. But for every foundation, there must be a depth. And so, from the same chaos came Tartarus, the pit. This wasn't just a place, it was a principle. The deepest, darkest abyss imaginable. Think of it as the universe's subconscious, a place so far down, so terrifying, it would later become the ultimate prison for cosmic evil. Gaia was life. Tartarus was the endless dark beneath it. And what force could possibly bridge such opposites? What could draw being from non-being? The Greeks had a beautiful answer. Eros, love. Not the chubby cherub with a bow and arrow. That came much later. This was primordial Eros, the fundamental force of attraction, the irresistible pull that draws matter together, that sparks life, that fuels desire. Without Eros, everything would have remained separate, isolated points in the void. Eros was the cosmic glue, the engine of creation. And so the family grows. From chaos came Nyx, the embodiment of night, a shadowy, veiled figure of immense power and mystery.
and Erebus, the tangible darkness that fills the void. Together, they birth children who are also concepts. Ether, the bright, pure upper air the gods breathe, and Hemera, the day. Do you see what's happening here? The first gods aren't people. They are principles. They are the universe defining itself. Earth, sky, night, day, love, the abyss. The Greeks were creating a language to describe the indescribable, to give a name and a personality to the fundamental forces that govern our reality. This is the first and most profound act of human storytelling, to look at the vast, impersonal universe and see a family. A family that, like any other, was about to have its first major fallout. Gaia, the earth, now had a partner, her son, Uranus, the sky. He covered her completely, a star-dusted blanket of absolute power. Their union gave birth to a new generation of beings, unlike the abstract forces that came before. These were the 12 Titans, and they were terrifying. Oceanus, the great river that circled the world. Hyperion, the first sun god, driving his chariot of fire across the sky. Rhea, the motherly figure. And the youngest, the most ambitious, the most cunning, Cronus. These titans were raw, untamed power, the embodiment of earthquakes, volcanoes, and hurricanes. And Uranus, their father, looked at them not with pride, but with absolute terror. Here we see a theme that will echo down through all of mythology and all of human history. The fear of the next generation. The terror of being replaced. Uranus saw his own strength mirrored in his children, and he knew, with a chilling certainty, that they would one day usurp him. It's a fear every king feels, every CEO, every parent even, in some small dark corner of their heart. The fear of obsolescence. And what does this first king, this god of the sky, do with his fear? He doesn't mentor his children. He doesn't guide their power. He commits an act of unimaginable cruelty. He takes his powerful, magnificent children and he shoves them back into the womb of their mother. He imprisons them deep within Gaia, the earth. Imagine the agony of Gaia, the mother forced to be the prison for her own children. Her body groans and shakes with their contained power. Earthquakes, volcanoes, this is the mythological explanation. It's the earth itself crying out in pain. This is not just a story, it's a profound metaphor for repressed trauma. When you bury something that powerful, that alive, it doesn't just disappear. It festers, it poisons you from the inside out. Gaia can bear it no longer. She needs a release. So she does something extraordinary. She forges a weapon. From within herself, she creates a great curved sickle forged from the mythical metal adamant, the hardest substance in the universe. A symbol of a mother's pain, sharpened into a tool of rebellion. She goes to her sons, one by one. "Your father is a tyrant," she pleads. "He has caused us both unbearable pain. Take this, free us, free yourselves." But they are afraid, all of them, except one, Cronus. the youngest, the one with the most to prove. He takes the sickle from his mother's hand. His decision is born of ambition, of resentment, of a desperate need to escape the crushing darkness. He agrees to do the unthinkable. That night, when the sky came to embrace the earth, Cronus struck. In an act of shocking, cosmic violence, he used the sickle to castrate his own father. He severed the source of his power and his tyranny. The sky pulled away from the earth, wounded and defeated. The reign of Uranus was over. From the blood that fell upon the earth, new, violent beings were born, the giants, the Furies. And from the genitals, tossed into the sea, a being of impossible beauty would later arise from the foam, Aphrodite, the goddess of love. Even in this act of brutal rebellion, new life, both monstrous and beautiful, is created. Cronus, the once imprisoned sun, was now the king of the cosmos. He had answered his mother's call and freed his siblings. But the weapon he used to gain power was betrayal. The precedent he set was patricide, and the shadow of that sickle would hang over his own golden age, a constant reminder that power seized by violence is never truly secure. He had escaped his father's prison only to begin building his own. With Cronus on the throne, the universe entered what the poets would later call the Golden Age. For a time, it was paradise. Humanity lived like gods, without toil, without sorrow, without old age. The earth provided all they needed freely. There was peace, there was prosperity. But for the new king, there was no peace, because power, especially power won through violence, breeds paranoia. Cronus was haunted, not by ghosts, but by a prophecy, the same prophecy his father had feared. It was whispered by his own parents, Gaia and Uranus, that just as he had overthrown his father, he too would be overthrown by his own child. This is the trap of the tyrant. It's the story of every dictator, every mafia boss, every insecure leader who cannot trust their inner circle. Their world shrinks until the only thing they can see is the threat of replacement. Cronus becomes a prisoner of his own anxiety, and his fear drives him to repeat the sins of his father, only in a more monstrous form. He won't imprison his children, he will erase them. As his wife Rhea gives birth to their children, Hestia, Demeter, Hera, Hades, Poseidon, one by one, Cronus takes the newborn infant and swallows it whole. Can you imagine a more perfect metaphor for a toxic, narcissistic parent? Devouring the potential of your own children to secure your own ego? Consuming their light so your own doesn't dim. Rhea, the great mother, is heartbroken. She has lost 5 children to this monstrous fear. When she becomes pregnant with her 6th child, she knows she cannot let it happen again. Her grief, like her mother Gaia's before her, turns into cunning. She travels to the island of Crete and gives birth in secret to a son. She names him Zeus. She hides the baby in a deep cave on Mount Ida, leaving him in the care of nymphs and a magical goat named Amalthea who would nurse him. Then she returns to Cronus, but this time she carries a deception. She takes a long, oblong stone, about the size of a newborn, and wraps it in swaddling clothes. She presents it to her husband, her eyes filled with false tears. and Cronus, in his ravenous haste, swallows the rock without a second thought. The king believes he is secure. The prophecy, he thinks, has been averted. But all he has done is swallow the symbol of his own deception. Meanwhile, leagues away, the real threat to his throne, his son Zeus, is growing stronger every day, nourished by the milk of a goat, hidden from the world, and destined to fulfill the very prophecy his father tried so desperately to destroy. The seed of rebellion was not devoured, it was planted, and it was about to grow. Hidden from his father's all-consuming fear, Zeus grew to manhood. He was not raised in the paranoid halls of a king, but in the wild, rugged landscapes of Crete. He learned strategy, not just strength. He learned that the greatest power does not always lie in a frontal assault, but in cleverness and alliance. His mother, Rhea, guided him, telling him of his swallowed siblings and his destiny. The time had come to liberate his family and challenge the king. Zeus devised a plan. He needed to get his siblings out of their father's stomach. Disguising himself, he managed to become Cronus's cupbearer. He prepared a potent mixture of mustard and wine, a potion designed not to poison, but to purge. He served it to his father, who drank it unsuspectingly. The effect was immediate and violent. Cronus, the great king, was overcome. He began to retch, and in a grotesque reversal of their births, he regurgitated his children. First, the stone, which would later be placed at Delphi as a sacred object. Then Poseidon, Hades, Hera, Demeter, and Hestia. They emerged not as infants, but as fully grown, powerful gods, their years of imprisonment having only concentrated their power and their rage. The battle lines were drawn. On one side, Cronus and most of the elder Titans, entrenched in their power on Mount Othrys. On the other, the young Olympians, led by Zeus, fighting from their fortress on Mount Olympus. The war for control of the universe had begun. The Titanomachy. For 10 long years, the war raged. It was a stalemate. The power of the Titans was immense, born of the raw elements of the world. The Olympians had youth and fury, but it wasn't enough. The cosmos shook with their battles. Mountains crumbled, seas boiled. Still, neither side could gain the upper hand. Zeus knew he needed a game changer, an ace in the hole. He remembered the stories of other children of Gaia and Uranus imprisoned long ago, not by Cronus, but by Uranus himself. Beings so powerful and monstrous that even the Titans feared them. He descended into the deepest part of the underworld, into Tartarus itself. There, he found the Cyclops, brilliant craftsmen with a single eye, and the Hecatoncheires, giants with 100 hands each. He freed them from their ancient prison, and in gratitude, the Cyclops, masters of the forge, bestowed upon the Olympians gifts of unimaginable power. To Hades, they gave the Helm of Darkness, a cap that could make the wearer invisible. To Poseidon, a mighty trident, with which he could shake the earth and command the seas. And to Zeus, they forged the ultimate weapon, the thunderbolt. Not just a flash of light, but the very fury of the sky, concentrated and weaponized. This was the turning point. The war reached its climax. Zeus, armed with lightning, Poseidon with the power of earthquakes, and Hades with the advantage of stealth, led the final assault. The 100-handed ones unleashed a volley of rocks so immense it buried the Titans. The old order was shattered. The Titans were defeated. Most were cast down into Tartarus, the very prison they had once used for their own enemies, to be guarded for eternity by the same hundred-handed giants Zeus had freed. Some, like the Titan Atlas, who led their forces, were given special punishments. He was condemned to hold the entire sky on his shoulders for eternity, a constant, crushing reminder of his defeat. The war was over. The universe was quiet again. A new generation had taken power. Now came the difficult part, learning how to rule. With the universe theirs for the taking, the three victorious brothers, Zeus, Poseidon, and Hades, had to divide their new kingdom. How do you carve up reality itself? They didn't fight over it. In a moment of surprising fairness, they drew lots, a cosmic lottery to decide the fate of everything. Zeus, the leader, drew the long straw. He became king of the gods and lord of the sky, ruling from his new home on Mount Olympus. His symbol, the eagle and the thunderbolt. Poseidon drew the second lot, granting him dominion over the seas, the oceans, the rivers, and the power to cause earthquakes. His symbol, the trident and the horse. And Hades, he drew the short straw. He was given the underworld, the vast, gloomy realm of the dead. It's important to understand, Hades was not the god of death itself. That was a separate being named Thanatos. Nor was he evil, like a devil figure. He was a king, a just, if grim, ruler of a kingdom that all mortals, good or bad, would one day have to visit. The rest of the Olympian family took their roles. Hera, Zeus's sister and now wife, became the powerful, if perpetually jealous, queen of the gods. Athena, born fully formed from Zeus's head, became the goddess of wisdom and strategic warfare. Demeter, the goddess of the harvest. Aphrodite, the goddess of love and beauty. Ares, the god of brutal warfare. Apollo, the god of music and prophecy. Artemis, the goddess of the hunt. Hephaestus, the lame blacksmith god. Hermes, the swift messenger. A full pantheon, each governing an aspect of life. The cosmos was now in order, but there was something missing. The earth, the stage for all this drama, was empty. It needed an audience. And this is where one figure, a titan who had wisely sided with the Olympians during the war, steps into the spotlight. A being whose name means forethought, Prometheus. Zeus tasked Prometheus and his slow-witted brother Epimetheus, whose name means afterthought, with populating the earth. Epimetheus went first, creating the animals. He gave them all the best gifts: fur for warmth, claws for defense, wings for flight, speed and strength. By the time he was done, he had nothing left for his final creation, mankind. Prometheus looked upon the naked, helpless creatures his brother had made. Humans, weak, shivering, and defenseless in a world of powerful beasts. And he was filled with a feeling the other gods rarely showed: pity. He saw a spark of potential in them, so he did something radical. He stole fire from the forge of Hephaestus on Olympus. Fire was more than just warmth. It was technology. It was knowledge. It was the beginning of civilization. With fire, humans could forge tools, cook food, see in the dark, and build communities. It was the spark of divinity, the tool that would allow humanity to master its environment. Prometheus gave us the power to shape our own destiny, and Zeus was furious. This is a profound moment. Why was Zeus so angry? Was it just about a stolen ember? No, it was about control. Prometheus had blurred the line between gods and mortals. He had given humanity the one thing that could make them less dependent on the gods. He had given them the power to progress. For this act of defiant compassion, Zeus devised a punishment of eternal cruelty. Prometheus was chained to a rock, where every single day a great eagle would descend and feast on his liver. As an immortal, his liver would regenerate overnight, only for the torment to begin again the next day. An eternity of agony for the crime of loving humanity too much. This myth is a cornerstone of Western thought. Prometheus is the ultimate rebel for a just cause. He is the whistleblower, the revolutionary, the scientist who defies convention to bring knowledge to the world, no matter the personal cost. His punishment wasn't just for stealing fire. It was for giving us the ability to question authority, to innovate, and to become, in our own small way, like gods.
Zeus's revenge wasn't finished. The punishment of Prometheus was for the gods. He needed a punishment for humanity, a way to sour the gift of fire. He needed to prove that the knowledge Prometheus gave them would only lead to sorrow. His plan was not a flood or a plague. It was a masterpiece of psychological warfare. He commissioned his master craftsman Hephaestus to create a new being, the first woman. She was perfect, breathtakingly beautiful, endowed with gifts from all the gods. They named her Pandora, which means all-gifted. But Zeus's gift was the most insidious. He gave her a boundless, nagging curiosity. Then he gave her one more thing, a sealed jar, or a box depending on the telling. And he gave her a single, simple instruction. Whatever you do, never, ever open this. He then sent this beautiful trap down to Earth as a gift for Epimetheus, Prometheus's brother, the one who always thought too late. Epimetheus, dazzled by Pandora's beauty, forgot his brother's warning and welcomed her into his home. Now, let's pause here. For centuries, this story has been used as a simple misogynistic tale. The foolish, curious woman who ruined everything for mankind. But it's so much more than that. The story isn't about the evil of women. It's about the nature of humanity itself. Zeus gave Pandora curiosity. He created the itch and then commanded her not to scratch it. Who among us could resist? The box called to her. The mystery was a torment. What could be so important that it had to be kept hidden forever? Finally, she could bear it no longer. Her hand trembling, she lifted the lid. And from it poured every evil, every plague, every sorrow imaginable. Disease, conflict, poverty, envy, death, they swarmed out and spread across the world. The Golden Age was well and truly over. Life was no longer a paradise. It was a struggle. Horrified at what she had done, Pandora slammed the lid shut. But it was too late. All the evils were free. She wept, looking at the empty container. But then she saw it. Left behind, fluttering weakly at the very bottom, was one last, tiny, glittering spirit. Elpis, hope. And this is the genius of the myth. Zeus, in his rage, had unintentionally given humanity the one tool it needed to endure the suffering he had unleashed: hope. The belief that things can get better. The resilience that allows us to face a world filled with hardship. The story of Pandora's box isn't about how evil entered the world. It's about how we learned to live in it. It's the understanding that life is a duality of suffering and hope, and that you can't have one without the other. This ancient story is a perfect description of the human condition.
As humanity struggled in this new world of hope and hardship, a new kind of being emerged, born from the frequent and often illicit unions between the gods and mortals, the demigods, the heroes. These were men and women who lived on the knife's edge between the divine and the human. They had the power of gods, but the hearts and the mortality of us. Their stories became the proving grounds for human potential. Take the tale of Theseus and the Minotaur. In Athens, a shadow of dread hung over the city. Every 9 years, they were forced to pay a horrifying tribute to King Minos of Crete. 7 young men and 7 young maidens sent to be devoured by a monster. The Minotaur, a creature with the body of a man and the head of a bull, locked away in the center of an inescapable maze called the labyrinth. This isn't just a monster story. The labyrinth is a symbol of a problem that seems impossibly complex, a situation with no clear way out. The Minotaur is the fear that lives at the heart of that problem, a brutal, shameful secret. King Minos's wife had given birth to the monster after being cursed by the god Poseidon, and Minos was so ashamed he built the labyrinth to hide it away. But hidden things don't disappear. They demand to be fed. Into this cycle of sacrifice steps the hero, Theseus, Prince of Athens. He volunteers to be one of the tributes, vowing to kill the beast or die trying. He is courage personified. But courage alone is not enough to solve a complex problem. He needs a strategy. Help comes from an unexpected place. The enemy's daughter, Ariadne, Princess of Crete, falls in love with Theseus and gives him the tools he needs to succeed: a sword to fight the beast and a ball of thread. The thread seems so simple, so mundane compared to the monster, but it is the key. As Theseus enters the disorienting maze, he ties one end of the thread to the entrance and unspools it as he goes. This is the real insight of the myth. When faced with overwhelming complexity, you don't need to see the whole path. You just need to remember how you got there. You need a way to trace your steps back to the beginning. In the heart of the labyrinth, he finds the Minotaur and slays it. He has confronted the monstrous secret at the center of the problem. But the victory would mean nothing if he were then lost forever. He follows the thread, his simple, clever lifeline, and finds his way back to freedom. He has not only conquered the beast, but the maze itself. It's a powerful lesson. Every one of us has a labyrinth in our life, a complex career challenge, a difficult relationship, a struggle with our own inner demons. We often focus only on the Minotaur, the big, scary problem, but the myth tells us the real solution is the thread. It's the process, the strategy, the simple, repeatable action that allows us to navigate complexity without getting lost. Find your thread, the story says, and you can conquer any maze. Theseus returns to his ship a hero, bringing the other Athenian youths with him. He has freed his city from its curse forever. But heroism and human fallibility are often two sides of the same coin. Before he left, Theseus had made a promise to his aging father, King Aegis, who stood watching the sea every day for his son's return. "If I am successful," Theseus had said, "I will change the black sails of my ship to white. That is how you will know I am alive." But in the elation of his victory, in the celebration of his triumph, Theseus forgot. It was a small detail, a simple oversight, but it would have the most devastating consequences. Back in Athens, his father Aegis scans the horizon. He sees a ship. It is his son's ship, but the sails, are black. In his grief, believing his son to be dead, the king threw himself into the ocean. By the time Theseus docked, he was no longer a prince returning to his father. He was a king who had inadvertently killed him. To this day, that body of water is called the Aegean Sea, named for a king who died of a broken heart because of a forgotten promise. This is one of the most tragic and human stories in all of mythology. It's a brutal reminder that the consequences of our actions and our inactions can be immense. It's not the monsters or the gods that bring about this tragedy. It's a simple human error. It teaches us that attention to detail, keeping our word, and considering the feelings of others are not small things. They can be the difference between a triumphant homecoming and a lifetime of regret. If a forgotten promise can cause a personal tragedy, a moment of vanity can cause a global catastrophe. The stage for the greatest war of the mythical age was not a battlefield, but a wedding. The sea nymph Thetis was marrying a mortal, and all the gods were invited. All, that is, except one, Eris, the goddess of discord. Insulted at being snubbed, Eris decided to do what she does best, sow chaos. She tossed a solid gold apple into the middle of the feast, inscribed with the words, "For the fairest." Instantly, 3 of the most powerful goddesses laid claim to it: Hera, the queen, Athena, the warrior scholar, and Aphrodite, the goddess of love. The argument threatened to tear Olympus apart. Zeus, too clever to get caught in the middle of that fight, outsourced the decision. He chose a mortal to be the judge, a handsome but rather shallow prince of Troy named Paris. Each goddess offered him a bribe. Hera offered him rule over all of Asia. Athena promised he would be the greatest warrior who ever lived. But Aphrodite's offer was the most tempting to a young man like Paris. She didn't offer power or glory. She offered him the most beautiful woman in the world for his wife. Paris, of course, chose Aphrodite. He gave her the apple. He made his choice. And in doing so, he sealed the doom of his city. The most beautiful woman in the world was Helen, Queen of Sparta. There was just one problem. She was already married to a powerful Greek king named Menelaus. But a promise is a promise. Aphrodite helped Paris sail to Sparta, seduce Helen, and bring her back with him to the mighty, walled city of Troy. Menelaus was enraged. He called upon his brother Agamemnon, and together they invoked an old oath, gathering all the kings and heroes of Greece. An army of 1,000 ships set sail for Troy, not just to get a woman back, but to defend their honor, to sack a rival city, and to win immortal glory. The Trojan War had begun. For 10 long years, the Greeks laid siege to Troy. The war was brutal, a meat grinder of heroes. It became the ultimate stage for human and divine drama. The gods themselves took sides, fighting and bleeding alongside the mortals. Apollo protected the Trojans, while Athena aided the Greeks. This was the age of legendary heroes. On the Trojan side, the noble Hector, fighting for his home and family. On the Greek side, the mighty Achilles, the greatest warrior alive, invincible in battle save for one small spot on his heel. His pride and his rage would shape the course of the war. After 10 years, Troy's walls remained unbreached. The city would not fall to force. So it had to fall to cunning. It was the clever Odysseus who devised the final, brilliant stratagem, the Trojan horse. The Greeks built a giant wooden horse, left it on the beach as a supposed offering to the gods, and pretended to sail away. The Trojans, ecstatic, believed they had won. They dragged the horse into their city as a trophy and celebrated their victory with a massive festival. That night, as the city slept in a drunken stupor, a hidden hatch in the horse opened. Greek soldiers, led by Odysseus, slipped out, opened the city gates from the inside, and let the entire Greek army pour in. The sack of Troy was a horror. The city was burned to the ground, its men killed, its women and children taken as slaves. The Greeks had won, but it was a hollow victory. The war had cost them a generation of heroes. And for many of the survivors, their greatest trials were only just beginning. The gods were not pleased with the brutal end of the war, and they would make the journey home a new kind of hell, especially for the man who thought of the horse, Odysseus.
The war was over, but for Odysseus, king of Ithaca, the fight was not. All he wanted was to go home to his wife Penelope and his son Telemachus. But his journey, which should have taken weeks, would stretch into 10 agonizing years. This journey, the Nostos, or homecoming, would become one of the greatest epics ever told, the Odyssey. It is the ultimate story of human resilience against a hostile universe. His trials were legendary. He was trapped by the one-eyed Cyclops, Polyphemus, a monstrous giant who began eating his men. Trapped in a cave, Odysseus couldn't just kill the giant because he wouldn't be able to move the boulder blocking the entrance. He had to use his mind. He got the Cyclops drunk, told him his name was Nobody, and then blinded him with a sharpened stake. When the other Cyclopses heard the giant screaming, they asked who was hurting him. "Nobody is hurting me," he cried, and so no one came to help. Odysseus had to defeat brute force with pure wit. He had to navigate between Scylla and Charybdis, a six-headed monster on one side and a ship-swallowing whirlpool on the other. This is the origin of the phrase between a rock and a hard place. It's a metaphor for an impossible choice, where any path leads to loss. Odysseus had to make a calculated decision. He steered closer to Scylla, sacrificing 6 of his men to the monster in order to save the rest of the crew and the ship from the whirlpool. It's a horrifying leadership choice, the lesser of two evils, the kind of brutal calculus that war and survival demand. He encountered the sirens, whose song was so beautiful it lured sailors to their deaths on the rocks. Odysseus, ever the seeker of knowledge, wanted to hear the song, but he didn't want to die. So he had his men plug their ears with wax and then ordered them to tie him to the mast, with instructions not to release him no matter how much he begged. He became the first person to ever hear the siren's song and live to tell the tale. It's a story about confronting a fatal temptation, about using constraints and planning to overcome our own weaknesses. For 10 years, this was his life. Lost at sea, battling monsters, tricked by sorceresses, even visiting the land of the dead. He lost all his ships, all his men. He was stripped of everything, his status, his wealth, his friends. Everything except his one burning desire to get home. His story is not just an adventure. It's a journey of identity. It teaches us that home is not just a place you go back to. It's the person you have to become to get there. After 20 years away, 10 at war, 10 at sea, a battered, scarred, and humbled Odysseus finally washes up on the shores of his beloved Ithaca, ready for his final battle, to reclaim his own life. So why? After all this time,
Why do we keep telling these stories? Why do the names Zeus, Apollo, Athena, and Heracles still echo in our world? It's because these myths are more than just stories. They are foundational human software. They are a complex, beautiful, and often brutal operating system for understanding the world and our place in it. The struggle between the Titans and the Olympians is the story of order versus chaos, the new generation replacing the old. The tale of Prometheus is the eternal debate about knowledge, authority, and consequence. The labors of Heracles are a roadmap for redemption, showing that even after the most terrible mistakes, we can find atonement through action and perseverance. The House of Atreus, with its endless cycle of revenge, is a chilling warning about how generational trauma works, how violence begets only more violence until someone is brave enough to break the chain. That's exactly what happens at the end of that cursed story. Orestes, after avenging his father by killing his mother, is pursued by the Furies, the ancient goddesses of vengeance. He is put on trial in Athens, with the goddess Athena herself presiding. The jury is split. Athena casts the deciding vote, not based on vengeance, but on reason and mercy. She transforms the Furies from spirits of vendetta into the Eumenides, the kindly ones, guardians of justice. The cycle is broken, not by a bigger sword, but by a better idea, the rule of law. These stories are coded into our very language. An Achilles' heel, a Trojan horse, opening Pandora's box, the Midas touch. They gave us the foundational concepts of psychology, like the Oedipus complex. They provide the framework for our entertainment, from epic films to superhero comics. What is a superhero, after all, but a modern demigod? They teach us that love can be a force powerful enough to make a musician descend into hell, and that grief can be so strong it changes the seasons of the earth. They teach us that our greatest strengths can also be the source of our greatest flaws, like Odysseus' cleverness, which got him out of trouble but also angered the gods and prolonged his journey. The final lesson of Greek mythology is this: it holds a mirror up to us. It tells us that the universe is a place of wonder and terror, that life is a struggle between fate and free will, that gods and monsters exist, and very often they live inside of us. Our ambition, our rage, our capacity for great love and devastating betrayal. These stories have survived for 3,000 years not because they are old, but because they are true. Not in a literal sense, but in the way all great stories are true. They reveal the unchanging, often contradictory, and beautifully complex nature of being human. And they remind us that in our own lives, in our own quests and tragedies and triumphs, we are still living out the echoes of Olympus, and the story is still being written by us.